My name is Adrienne Cole. I'm 32 years old, and I used to believe that loyalty was the foundation of success. I learned the hard way that loyalty is only sacred until greed knocks on the door. 3 years ago, I was living my dream, or so I thought. I had co-founded a small tech startup with two of my closest friends, Derek and Lila. We met in college, bonded over late-night coding sessions, cheap pizza, and the wild dream of building something that could change the world. I was the idea guy and lead developer. Derek was the business strategist, and Lila was our marketing genius. The three of us were unstoppable. We built our prototype in a cramped apartment with extension cords snaking across the floor and takeout boxes piling up in the kitchen. We argued about design choices at 2 a.m., celebrated every breakthrough with cheap champagne, and swore we'd never let money come between us. I actually believed that. Our software, a sleek automation tool for small businesses, was catching the attention of investors. We were scheduling meetings, fine-tuning our pitch, and dreaming about the day we'd finally see our names in the headlines. Every step felt like a shared victory. Then came the day that shattered everything. It was a gray Wednesday morning. I stopped at my favorite cafe on the way to the office, smiling as I thought about the investor meeting we had later that afternoon. But when I arrived at our building and swiped my keycard, the red light flashed. Access denied. Confused, I tried again. Still red. I buzzed the front desk. "Hey, it's Adrienne. My card's not working." The receptionist wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, Adrienne, but you're no longer with the company." I laughed, thinking it had to be some kind of dumb prank Derek had cooked up. But then I saw him, standing in the hallway with Lila beside him. They didn't look at me like a friend. They looked at me like I was a problem they'd already solved. "Adrienne," Derek said, his voice cold and rehearsed. "We've decided to move in a different direction. You're no longer needed." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. "What the hell are you talking about? This is my code, my concept. We built this together." Lila's voice was softer, almost apologetic, but it cut deeper than Derek's. "We've restructured. The board voted you out. It's nothing personal." Nothing personal? I felt the floor tilt beneath me. They had taken my idea, my sweat, my sleepless nights, and erased me from my own creation. My voice rose. "The board? Since when do we have a board? And since when do you have the right to—" Derek cut me off. "You signed the contracts, Adrienne. Everything is perfectly legal. I suggest you walk away before this gets unpleasant." It hit me like ice water. They had been planning this for months. Behind my back, they'd rewritten the contracts, transferred ownership, and charmed investors into believing I was unstable and unfit to lead. I wanted to fight right there in the hallway, to scream at them, to make them see what they had done. But Derek's smug smile told me I was already too late. The next week was a blur. I sat in lawyers' offices, listening to them explain how airtight the agreements were. "You should have read the fine print," one said, not unkindly. I wanted to punch him anyway. Meanwhile, news articles were everywhere. Innovative startups set to disrupt market, featuring Derek and Lila, smiling side by side, presenting my software as if I had never existed. I stayed up until dawn scrolling through their photos, my stomach twisting into knots of anger and grief. Friends I'd known for years stopped returning my calls. People I thought would defend me suddenly wanted nothing to do with the drama. And then came the whispers. Rumors that I'd had emotional issues, that I was difficult to work with, that the company had saved itself by letting me go. I didn't leave my apartment for days. I sat in the dark, replaying every late-night meeting, every laugh we'd shared, wondering how I'd missed the signs. My phone buzzed constantly, but I ignored it. I couldn't face anyone. But rock bottom has a strange way of clearing your vision. One night, sitting alone with nothing but my laptop and a half-empty bottle of whiskey, I opened an old notebook. It was full of sketches, half-baked ideas, scraps of code from before the company ever existed. My hands shook. Not from fear this time, but from something else. Determination. I realized something. Derek and Lila might have stolen my project, but they couldn't steal my mind. They couldn't take away my creativity, my skill, or my ability to build again. That night, I made a promise to myself, not just to survive, but to build something so big, so undeniable, that they would choke on their own success. I would create an empire, from scratch, alone, and this time I wouldn't just win. I would bury them. The morning after I made that promise to myself, I woke up with a pounding headache and the taste of cheap whiskey still clinging to my tongue. But under all that, something was burning in my chest, an almost feral hunger. I didn't have an office. I didn't have funding. Hell, I didn't even have a proper desk. My workspace was a rickety coffee table in my living room, surrounded by stacks of old notebooks and cold coffee cups. But I had my laptop, my skills, and a vision. And sometimes that's enough. The first weeks were brutal. I worked 18 hours a day, barely eating, barely sleeping. My fingers cramped from typing. My eyes burned from staring at the screen, but I didn't stop. Every time exhaustion whispered, "What's the point?" I pictured Derek's smug grin and Lila's pitying eyes. That image was gasoline on the fire. I knew I couldn't just make a copy of my old software. That would be small thinking. I needed something bigger, something that would crush their product by sheer force of innovation. I spent hours dissecting their public features, identifying weaknesses, and scribbling solutions in the margins of my notebook. But here's the thing about starting over. Nobody believes in you. I called old contacts, hoping someone would take a chance on me. Most didn't pick up. The few who did gave me the same polite brush off. "It's risky to work with you right now, Adrian." Translation: You're toxic. I maxed out my credit cards to buy cloud storage, new equipment, and access to expensive development tools. Rent payments bounced. My fridge was a wasteland. Half a jar of mustard and expired milk. I lost 15 pounds without even trying. But the code was coming alive. Line by line, I could see it taking shape. A faster, smarter platform that could automate tasks in ways Derek's and Lila's stolen version couldn't even dream of. Then came the first breakthrough. At 3:47 a.m. on a Thursday, after weeks of failed tests, I cracked a problem that had been haunting me. A way to integrate AI-powered predictions directly into the automation flow. It was elegant, efficient, and years ahead of what was on the market. I leaned back, staring at the screen, my heart pounding. For the first time since I'd been locked out of that building, I smiled. Not out of spite, but out of pride. Still, I needed funding. And that meant I had to face the one thing I'd been avoiding. People. I put on my only clean suit, which hung looser than I remembered, and walked into an investor meeting at a local co-working space. There were 6 of them, sitting around a table with expressions that said, "Impress me in 5 minutes or leave." I pitched like my life depended on it, because it did. I told them about the pain points my software solved, the technology behind it, the future it could create. I didn't mention Derek or Lila by name, but I let my voice sharpen when I talked about competitors stuck in outdated models. One of them, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, leaned forward. "How much runway do you have left?" I swallowed. "About 3 weeks." The room went silent. Then Claire smiled, slow and deliberate. "Desperation makes for fast execution. I like that." 2 days later, I had my first investor. With Claire's seed money, I hired a small but lethal team, 2 developers, a UX designer, and a marketing specialist who could sell water to a drowning man. We worked out of a cramped loft with flickering lights and a leaky roof, but the energy in that room was electric. Word began to spread. Early beta testers were blown away by the speed and accuracy of the software. Small business owners who had struggled with Derek and Lila's clunky system were switching to ours without hesitation. I didn't just want users. I wanted loyalty. So I built a direct support channel, personally answering questions at 2 a.m., walking customers through setup calls, and sending thank you notes by hand. People remembered that. They told their friends. 6 months in, we had paying clients in 3 countries. A year later, we were signing contracts with major retailers. Our revenue curve looked like a rocket launch. And yet, the sweeter the success, the sharper the ache for revenge became. Because while I was building, I kept an eye on Derek and Lila. Their company was still making noise in the press, but cracks were forming. Users were complaining about bugs and poor support. Key staff were leaving. And then, one night, I got an email from someone I hadn't expected, one of their senior developers. The subject line read, "I want out. Can we talk?" When we met in a dingy diner, he spilled everything. How Derek's ego was poisoning the culture, how Lila was stretched too thin, how investors were growing restless. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. "They're planning a major update. It's basically your AI idea, but badly executed. If they launch it, they're hoping to crush you before you grow too big." I walked out of that diner with 2 things: a new hire and a battle plan. We accelerated development, adding features Derek and Lila couldn't even imagine, and set a launch date for the same week as their big update. My marketing team went into overdrive. Targeted ads, teaser videos, whispers in the right online forums. By the time their announcement hit, the industry was already buzzing about our innovation. Their launch flopped. Mine exploded. The day we crossed our first $1 million in revenue, I stood in that same cafe where I'd once stopped before being locked out of my own company. I ordered my coffee, opened my laptop, and pulled up the live dashboard, watching the sales numbers tick upward like a heartbeat. I thought about Derek and Lila, about the hallway where they'd looked at me like I was nothing. And I smiled, not because I had beaten them, but because I had proven, to them, to the world, to myself, that I was never nothing. I was unstoppable. And this was only the beginning. For weeks, I had been carefully setting my plan in motion. Every sleepless night, every cup of cold coffee, every relentless phone call was fueled by the image of their smug faces the day they took everything from me. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about proving to them and to myself that I could rise from the ashes they left me in and burn brighter than ever. The startup I had built from scratch, my real startup, was finally starting to make waves. My designs were better, my team was loyal, and my strategies were sharper than anything I'd created before. But I kept my name out of the press, letting my COO, Amelia, take the spotlight for now. I didn't want them to see me coming. Then the perfect opportunity fell into my lap. A massive trade show was coming to the city, the biggest event in our industry. My former friends, now enemies, would be there, flaunting the success they had stolen from me. But what they didn't know was that I had secured a prime booth right across from theirs. Not under my name, of course. The morning of the trade show, the convention hall buzzed like a beehive. Attendees poured in, their badges flashing under the bright lights. I stood behind our booth, watching their display being set up across the aisle. Max, the so-called CEO, was barking orders like he owned the place, while Lila flitted around charming journalists. I felt my jaw tighten. When they finally noticed me, well, my booth, they froze. I could see the confusion in their eyes as they looked at my banners, my sleek product prototypes, my team dressed in sharp black uniforms. Lila's smile faltered for the first time in years. I didn't wave. I didn't speak. I just watched. Throughout the day, their booth was swamped, but not in the way they expected. People were coming to our booth first, drawn by our clean branding, innovative designs, and the subtle whispers that our tech outperformed theirs. By mid-afternoon, I overheard Max snapping at his team. "Find out who the hell these people are. They're stealing our traffic." If only he knew. The real blow came when our scheduled presentation hit the main stage. Amelia walked out with confidence, presenting our flagship product to a packed audience. I stayed in the shadows, observing every reaction. Gasps. Cheers. Phones snapping pictures. A tech blogger I recognized whispered to his colleague, "This changes everything." That night, social media lit up with side-by-side comparisons of our product and theirs. The verdict was brutal. We weren't just better, we were light years ahead. Still, I wasn't satisfied. They had humiliated me once, and a single good day at a trade show wasn't enough to erase the scars they left. So, I escalated. 2 weeks later, I launched a limited run campaign targeting their biggest client. I knew their contract renewal was coming up, and I also knew their CEO's soft spot for ethical production. My team put together a flawless pitch showing not only our superior quality, but also our fully transparent, eco-friendly manufacturing process. We got the deal. It was their biggest account. Gone overnight. The news hit them like a thunderclap, and suddenly their unstoppable company was leaking money. Layoffs began. Desperate calls to investors went unanswered. And still, I wasn't done. I secured interviews in key industry publications, this time with my face front and center. I told my story carefully, never naming them outright, but making it very clear that betrayal had been the turning point for my new empire. The public ate it up. From stolen dreams to $1 million vision became the headline that followed me everywhere. Then came the night of the charity gala. I knew they would be there. It was the kind of event Max lived for. A place to show off his tuxedo and pretend he still mattered. I wore a floor-length crimson gown, my hair styled in waves, the picture of poised success. Halfway through the evening, I saw them enter. Max looked thinner, his suit hanging just a bit too loose. Lila clung to his arm. Her usual sparkle dulled. When our eyes met across the ballroom, there was no mistaking the recognition. I smiled. I walked over slowly, each step deliberate, until I stood right in front of them. The music swelled, the chandeliers glittered, and for a moment it was like we were the only 3 people in the room. Max, Lila, I said softly. It's been a while. They fumbled for words. Max's jaw worked soundlessly before he finally muttered, "You've done well." "I have," I replied, my smile never fading. "And this," I gestured around the glittering room, "is just the beginning." I didn't stay to hear their reply. I didn't need to. As I walked away, I felt lighter than I had in years. The war wasn't over, but I had just won my first major battle. And I knew, deep down, that the final blow would be the sweetest of all. A year had passed since the day I walked away from Max and Lila, stripped of my work, my confidence, and the people I once trusted most. In that year, something remarkable had happened. I'd built a company from the ashes, brick by brick, fueled by sleepless nights and a fire in my chest that refused to go out. What started as a few sketches on my dining table had grown into a multi-million-dollar brand. We didn't just compete, we dominated. Our name was on industry front pages, our products were sold out weeks in advance, and people who wouldn't return my calls a year ago now begged for a seat at my table. And yet, even with all that success, I kept my eyes on Max and Lila, through contacts, whispers at networking events, and the occasional accidental email forward. I tracked their decline. At first, it was small. Delayed orders, quiet complaints from suppliers. Then came rumors of unpaid invoices, key staff walking out, and a disastrous product launch that got shredded in reviews. They were sinking, and I knew it. But revenge wasn't about kicking someone while they were down. It was about waiting until they thought they had one last lifeline, and then cutting it clean. That chance came when I heard about a government tender. It was massive. A multi-million-dollar contract that would not only stabilize a business, but define the market leader for years. Max and Lila were the obvious frontrunners. Their contacts in the industry, their prior experience, everything was lined up for them. Except for one thing, me. For months, I played a long game. I attended every networking dinner where I knew a tender board member might appear. I spoke on panels, shaking hands with decision makers. I quietly let people discover how I had been wronged, not through bitterness, but through carefully chosen anecdotes and well-timed humility. By the time the official proposals were submitted, I knew I had already shifted the tide. Not by bribery, not by sabotage, but by building a reputation so strong that choosing anyone else would have seemed absurd. The phone call came on a rainy Tuesday morning. "We're awarding the contract to you," the official said, his voice calm, almost ceremonial. They never stood a chance. Too many issues. I thanked him, hung up, and just sat there for a moment. This was it. The moment everything had been leading to. The announcement went public the next day. Headlines screamed, "Scandal topples former industry leaders." Photos of Max and Lila, pale and tense, were splashed across news sites. Their investors pulled out within hours. Court cases, long dormant, suddenly resurfaced. The same afternoon, my phone buzzed. Lila's name flashed on the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was shaky, and in the background, I could hear what sounded like the echo of an empty apartment. We lost everything, she said. Max is gone. Left the country 2 days ago. I can't even pay next month's rent. You? I said, my tone sharper than I intended. You can't pay rent? There was a pause. I know we made mistakes, but we were friends once. Can't you? I laughed. A short, bitter sound. Friends don't stab each other in the back and steal years of work. Her breathing hitched. Max said it was just business, I continued. Guess he was wrong. Business has consequences. I'm sorry, she whispered. You're sorry now because you've lost. That's not the same as regret, I said. Good luck, Lila. And I hung up. A week later, I got an invitation to their bankruptcy auction. I didn't need to go. I didn't want their scraps, but something in me needed to see the end with my own eyes. The building was colder than I remembered, stripped of the life and arrogance it once held. Rows of office chairs, computers, and furniture stood like soldiers lined up for judgment. Max's beloved leather chair sold for $45. Lila's sleek glass desk went for $80. The company name, the one they had stolen from me, was purchased by a small competitor for less than the cost of 1 month's utilities in their old headquarters. The nameplate from Max's desk? $10. I almost bought it, but decided I didn't need the reminder. As the crowd dispersed, I stepped outside. The late autumn wind cut through my coat, sharp and bracing. Amelia was waiting beside the car, watching me. You did it, she said softly. I looked at her and shook my head. We did it. But this was never just about them. It was about proving to myself that they couldn't define me, that I could take everything they tried to destroy and turn it into something stronger. We drove away, the building shrinking in the rearview mirror until it was just another part of the cityscape. For the first time in years, the tightness in my chest was gone. I had beaten them, not just by winning, but by replacing them entirely. And as the city lights blurred past the window, I realized the sweetest revenge wasn't destroying your enemies. It was outlasting them,